Black Op Radio presents 50 Reasons for 50 Years. Why the Warren Commission may be the greatest fraud perpetrated on the American public. Now your host, Len Osanek.
In this episode, we investigate the gift that keeps on giving, namely the Paine's garage. It seemed that whenever a piece of evidence was needed to bolster the case against Lee Oswald, it just popped up thanks to Ruth or Michael Paine. Author, researcher Jim DiEugenio explains.
This is Jim DiEugenio, the author of Destiny Betrayed. Ruth Paine went to pick up Marina Oswald in the latter part of September 1963 from the Oswald's apartment in New Orleans. Because she had a station wagon, Ruth managed to transport all the Oswald belongings, and she transported them to her garage in Irving, Texas. On the day of the assassination, Ruth, when the police came to their house, she said words to the effect, "We thought you might be here." Then her and Marina left the house and essentially gave the run of their home to the police, which was the beginning of a 2-day search of the Paine household for as much evidence as the cops could find against Lee Harvey Oswald, who was in detention. So, what are some of the things that came out of this garage on the first and second day? There's the photographs of General Edwin Walker's home in Turtle Creek. There were the backyard photographs where Oswald was pictured with a rifle and a handgun and leftist magazines in his hands. There were 3 cameras, none of them being the right camera to take either the backyard photographs or the Walker home pictures with. See, the other cameras that were taken were not the right kind of film to accommodate that kind of picture. That particular camera was not turned over for approximately 2 months in February, when Robert Oswald came over to Ruth Paine's home, picked up a box that was in her garage, and this particular camera was in that box. There was the famous Minix camera episode. One of the cameras taken was a very small spy camera. So you could hide it very easily and take photographs that the person would not even know you're taking a picture. This created a big hubbub when one of the Dallas policemen explained that they had taken this miniature spy camera as one of Oswald's belongings. J. Edgar Hoover understood that this would be a problem in explaining to the public what a guy making $1.25 an hour packing books was doing with an expensive Minix camera, which there was only one photographic lab in America where he could develop the pictures. What then happens over a period of a couple of weeks is that this camera gets switched over to Michael Paine, even though when the police went to pick up the camera, Ruth said that it was not their camera, it was Oswald's camera. We're now supposed to believe that a camera was actually taken from the Paine household for a number of weeks, an expensive spy camera like this, and neither Ruth nor Michael knew that it was their camera, which means now, of course, that the police took 2 cameras that were supposed to belong to the Paines, and they didn't say anything about it. On around November 30th, Ruth Paine produces the so-called Walker Note. This was a back and front of one page, which allegedly written by Oswald, which did not surface till a week after the assassination, in which he's giving instructions to Marina. There's no date on this, and General Walker is never named. And some of the things in the letter are kind of inconsistent with Oswald. In other words, it tells her to cash checks to him when they arrive in the mail, when in fact the checks were not mailed to Oswald, and Marina could not cash them because they were not in her name. It tells her to go to the Red Cross, that the Red Cross is only for natural disasters and emergencies. How could a shooting be caused to go to the Red Cross? Also, neither Oswald's nor Marina's fingerprints are on this letter, and when it was checked out by the FBI. The Secret Service actually brought the letter back to Ruth Paine because they suspected that it was hers. When they actually tried to return this, she denied it was hers, but she said, since you're here, I'm going to give you some more evidence about Oswald being in Mexico City, because at this time, Marina was denying that Oswald had been to Mexico City. So she gave them a rules for betting card. Oswald supposed to have got this at a racetrack in Mexico City, a Spanish-English dictionary with a note to attending a Jai game, which the place down there that had a Jai arena at it, Oswald did not have the proper attire to get into that. And there were notes for to do other things like pick up a necklace for Marina. This begins to turn the tide and begins to change Marina's attitude. In a month or two after, she's going to say now that Oswald was in Mexico City. In 1967, in George de Morenschild's storage unit in Dallas, previously, Everett Glover and Michael Paine cooperated on bringing back record albums which had been lent by George to Marina back into his locker. When the de Morenschilds return, they find the records, and amid the records, what comes tumbling out? Still another backyard photograph. Over 3 years later, there's still backyard photographs showing up. This particular one is so unusual, so different than the other ones. It's usually called the de Morenschild version. It has a different field of view, it has a higher resolution, and it has a particular border around it that the other ones do not. The 30th anniversary of John F. Kennedy's death, there's a declassification process is being set up. Michael Paine now, 30 years after the fact, says something he never said before. He said that he actually saw a backyard photograph in April of 1963. And guess what? Oswald showed it to him. Perhaps no other people have produced so much evidence against Lee Harvey Oswald than Ruth and Michael Paine.
Stay tuned for the next installment as we expose week after week 50 lies the Warren Commission would like you to believe.